And welcoming everybody to Scout's Eye on Football. I am Chris Landry with you here on this Tuesday, July 27th. Just kind of moseying on down the road, are we? As we're getting into the throes of it. Training camps are, every team is open up their training camp now. And fall practices, summer practices, preseason practices, I'll get it right, are coming up in college football. Well, we are excited to be with you today. A lot of things we're going to get into. Going to get into some news of the day, kind of what's going on. We'll like to do that, particularly now when there's a lot of news going on. We're going to mix in some college and football today, college and pro football today. More on that in a second as I kind of get you squared away and kind of tell you about what we've got coming on board. Latest on the expansion talks and the rumors and everything going on there. The Pac-12 has their media day. A lot's come up about expansion there and what's happening, what they're thinking. We're going to get into that. And we'll certainly take your questions in the mailbag section. I want to remind you that you can follow us and watch us. If you listen to this in a podcast form, make sure that you join us live. Watch the show live. This one every same time at 5 p.m. Central Time on twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. That's all you got to do. Twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. Follow us by clicking the heart button, and please join us in the chat room. And you'll get notifications on your mobile device whenever we go live on a show. We are always looking to try to improve things, and we're going to try out some things, and we always like your feedback. As you know, if many of you do join us, and see Tony joining us in the chat room. Tony, good afternoon. We're going to kind of mix some things up here, and starting next week, we're going to try to maybe organize things a little bit better. As many of you know, we have put a lot of shows together on the network. We've partnered with the Podcast Park. Many of you that listen to this show here also listen to me and Neil on the SEC Football and Beyond on Mondays and Thursdays live, and of course you can catch the show dropping on Tuesdays and Friday mornings. But we're going to be adding, I'm going to be doing some additional shows. You know that I do this show, Scout's Eye on Football. On Wednesday, we do the Landry Football Podcast. We're going to try to coordinate things a little bit differently and a little bit better. First of all, on the college side, what we're going to do is I'm going to do once a week an ACC Football and Beyond, a Big Ten Football and Beyond, a Big 12 Football and Beyond, and whatever that looks like right now, we're going to do that, and a Pac-12 Football and Beyond, and it'll be staggered each day. So at 5 p.m. Central on Monday, it'll be SEC Football and Beyond. At 4 o'clock Central, before we do SEC Football and Beyond on Mondays and Thursdays, I'll do ACC Football and Beyond on Mondays at 4 p.m. Central. I'll do Big Ten Football and Beyond on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Central. Big 12 Football and Beyond at 4 p.m. Central on Wednesdays. And then on Thursdays, Pac-12 Football and Beyond. We will take this show, the Scout's Eye on Football, and try to break that up a little bit. We're going to do Scout's Eye on College Football at 3 p.m. on Tuesdays, Central Time Zone, and then at 5 p.m. we're going to do Scout's Eye on Pro Football. So we've mixed things up, but we're going to try to segment a little bit, see how that works. I know you sitting there thinking, oh, how am I going to remember all that? Very simple. Go to LandryFootball.com, and you're going to see a kind of a pink box that says follow Chris on Twitch. Right underneath, you'll see Chris Landry Football Twitch TV program schedule, and it'll tell you which days, and we're going to have it on there. We're kind of growing and adding shows, part of the Landry Football podcast channel. So you want to, again, see the show live, go to twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. That's how you're going to want to do it. Twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. Or click follow Chris on Twitch over at Landry Football and sign up so that you can get notification. If you are listening to this in podcast form and you want it that way, make sure that you subscribe like, and subscribe to the Landry Football Podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Then you won't miss out on any of that. So, all right, so that's enough of that. I know that's a lot, and I appreciate your patience in getting into that. Want to get into some news of the day, and I encourage you, if you have not yet checked out LandryFootball.com, want to make sure that you do that. You got a lot of information there, a lot of what we can't get to on the show, but some of the things we'll hit on the key topics. For example, today we'll talk a little bit about a very underrated running back out of NC State that you need to know about. Auburn getting a impressive verbal commitment today from a running back out of state of Georgia. You can learn about that. Florida State getting a very good player, defensive lineman that's considered a 3-star, really more of a 4-star guy. A little look at Sam Howell. Is he the best returning quarterback in the ACC this year? Some recruiting information. Duke and Wake Forest getting guys committed today, and a little bit on an impressive freshman running back at Indiana. An update on Ole Miss and Jerry and Ely. So got a lot of information there. You want to check that out in our notebook today on LandryFootball.com. On the NFL side, Aaron Rodgers reports to camp. We've got some information on that, of course. Going to be, it appears, a restructured deal. I'm curious to see how the contract, you will hear a lot of reporting, but until you read the paragraph 5, and it's going to take a while before it officially goes in the league. So how are they going to do that? I would think that they're probably, the only way you can guarantee your freedom next year is probably Green Bay could write in a poison pill or redo the contract. Going to be interesting to see how they do that, because I'm sure they're going to try to convince him to stay beyond this year, and we'll see if that relationship gets better or if it's regressed to the point where there's no turning back. It appears showing up, and he is going to play this year. Not going to get any more money, but will get his freedom at the end of the year. So we'll see how that plays out. Got some news in my notebook today, the NFL notebook, on Najee Harris, and the early look at what the Steelers feel like he brings to the table for their offense and the 3-down back. We got some information there. Update on the Jamal Adams contract talks. Got that as well. We'll talk with Ron Rivera and the latest there. Packers release a quarterback today, not Blake Bortles. We'll learn a little bit what they're thinking there. The latest on Larry Fitzgerald. A little peek inside the Chargers and the Broncos organization as well. The Packers are working on a trade for Texans wide receiver Randall Cobb. We've got information on that, how that might play out. Of course, Chandler Jones, who's asked for a new deal, asked to be traded, actually, is reported to the Cardinals camp. And then we've got the latest on the Steelers. We mentioned, talked a little bit about what they think of their natural left tackle spot. And how things are looking there. For the Bears, we've got an update on their running game. David Montgomery in the role there. Justin Fields looking good early. And Andy Dalton still the quote-unquote number 1 there. We'll see how that plays out. And then an update on what's going on with the Vikings, and obviously promoting Phil Rosher to offensive line coach, but still keeping Rick Dennison now on the staff. So a lot of ups. We've got some Browns updates as well, so check that out, along with other stuff. The talk and the question marks about guys who haven't signed yet. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, not a big issue at this point. You miss more practices, it's potentially going to be a problem. Deshaun Watson. is scheduled to give his deposition in lawsuits here coming up soon. The league has not limited him or the Texans in any workouts to this point. So he can report. He has reported. He still wants to be traded. We'll see where that takes it. But obviously, that's all on hold. No one is going to trade for him until they know a little bit more about that situation. So, but he hasn't been put in any suspension list at this point by the league. We give a little bit of update there, as well as some other news going on in the Texans camp. So a lot of news there on the college and the pro side. So make sure that you check that out. I want to get into some of the latest expansion talks. And not that we can really advance it, because there's not a whole lot of news other than officially Texas and Oklahoma has filed for admission into the SEC, which simply means that it's filling out an application. So the wheels are in motion. Still legal maneuverings and details that need to take place. No one thinks that Texas and Oklahoma are going to stay in the Big 12 through 2025. But that's what they've legally stated. Oh, yeah, we want to stay. We want to play. We're going to honor that. Well, the reason why they're doing that is to make them come along and say, here's what we're going to do. We're not comfortable with you being here in short term. And if we can't get a new TV deal out of it, you know, if you're not happy with us staying here through it, then let's form an exit strategy, Big 12, and let's see how that goes. What happens if the Big 12 falls? Texas and Oklahoma owe anything to a league that's no longer there. I think their lawyers are going to have to get involved, obviously, as they normally do, and decide some of this. I think the end result is going to be, obviously, that we're going to see the movement. And I thought it was interesting today, and I'll jump right into the Pac-12 had their media days today, starting today. And as we discussed on other shows here on this network, that's going to be the main topic about where are you, new conference commissioner, on expansion, what's your role? And of course, they've said we don't need to add anybody. I mean, it's the right, we don't need to, but we certainly are going to look out for our future, which simply means, and this is where I want to take this, everyone is looking at all options and not trusting anybody. It's as simple as that. People want to look for contingency plans. They want to look for options. If you're in the Big 12, you're trying to find a home. Is there going to be a home in the Big 12? If you're the Big 12, do you become the Big 8 again, regardless of the name, and just stay there? Do you add somebody? As I mentioned yesterday on the SEC Football and Beyond show, I think it's a bit of a race between, does the Big 12 add somebody from the AAC? Does the AAC have enough clout to get somebody from the Big 12? Would you want to leave the Big 12 to go to the AAC? Is the Big 12 going to stay in a smaller form? The Big 12 is comparable to the AAC right now, even without Texas, Oklahoma, in a smaller number. How does that play out? I think that's going to be interesting. One thing that I've talked to folks about that might be something to look out for. We're making some assumptions that we have to have, why doesn't the Big Ten and the Pac-12 do some sort of a merging? I don't think that, first of all, I would not say that's completely off the table. I don't know that it's on the table, but I wouldn't rule anything out. But I think there's a work around it. I don't think for conference stability, either one needs to raid the other. I I think that there's another possibility here, a partnership. And you know that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have had partnerships with regard to the Rose Bowl. What I think could possibly happen, or it's an idea, I was batting it around with an administrator today, that you go to Fox and you put together, we've talked a lot about the SEC and how they're going to do it. They may go to a pod system, which I think you know how that would work. A pod system where you would rotate and you'd play your regular normal group in the pod, everybody in the pod, and you'd have somebody that's a natural crossover, but then you would rotate, so every 3 years you're playing everyone, and it maybe makes some sense. Well, you could potentially do that and approach a network like Fox and say, because that's who the Big Ten partner is, and it's also who the Pac-12 has a partnership with. Could we make it to where we have more games, not necessarily attack each other as a conference, but partner up as a conference for maybe some sort of a setup of games? Now, again, with the, for example, I think one of the things that the Pac-12 is looking at is 9 games is making it, they're very concerned about their lack of competitiveness in making the playoffs. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of it is they play 9 conference games. Maybe you restructure things a little bit, don't play as many games. How do you maybe pick your champion? Maybe you look at it, maybe you do away Big Ten and Pac-12 with divisions, and maybe you play more games within one another. And does that hurt your national profile? Maybe you got more losses. I think you got to look at that. I mean, I think those are things that are all in discussions. One of the things that I've been asked about, and I checked on with, and I want to get back to some more Pac-12 discussion here in a minute. I'm doing it because the other media days are done, and we've broken down the SEC and other league, and I'm gonna get into some NFL talks here in a second. No, I've been asked about Notre Dame. Where's Notre Dame going? I don't take anything off the table. But I don't get the sense that they have an appetite at Notre Dame to do anything now. I get the feeling that they feel like that the best thing for them is to sit tight, see where things go. I just don't get a sense that that's going to take place. Now, if I'm the ACC, I'd love to get Notre Dame to come on board. I would bring West Virginia in. A natural rival with Pitt, and I think makes some sense. And I would try to see and test the grants of rights agreement in the Big Ten and the ACC, which are very long, a lot of years left. I would try to make a run at Penn State and maybe Maryland again. And I think that's what I would be thinking if I was the ACC. Now, here's the other thing to keep in mind, because everybody thinks we're going to go and raid this or that. You know that there's a lot of schools that are being talked about in terms of movement, but none of them are big, meter-moving schools, other than Notre Dame. Texas and Oklahoma's off the table. There's not that big, moving the other schools is just putting numbers in, and you got to decide, like, as I said, if you're the Big 8, if you're going to bring somebody in, they have to give you have to know, you have to go to the TV partners and say, if we add these two, how much more money we can get. And if you can't get it, stay at 8, you got less mouths to feed. Common sense. That's how you do it. If I'm looking at it, if I'm the Big Ten, I don't necessarily jump and say, I'm going to add Kansas and Iowa State. Everybody's got them doing that. For what? It doesn't increase their profile. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think you're going to see USC, UCLA, that type of movement to the Big Ten. Here's the thing to keep in mind. It's one thing for a Texas and Oklahoma to leave a weaker conference like the Big 12, financially I'm speaking, not football prowess or anything, with 4 years left of grants of rights agreement. 4 years is not a whole lot to buy out. If you're going to get an ACC team away, you're going to go and purge an ACC team. For people that say, oh, the SEC is going to go. Remember, they've got 15 years left on their grants of right agreement. Now, here's the other thing, and this is where lawyers are going to have to determine. Would that grants of right agreement hold up in court? Heck, I don't know. But if it truly would, for 15 years, you're not getting, if that holds up in court, you're not getting any one of those schools to be able to buy out 15 years worth. 4 or 5 years, yes. So I think that keep that in mind as everybody's guiding this. And I don't know that I'd sit here and say that I would disagree with people that say the expansion is over, the SEC's done. No, I think there's absolutely a constant discussion about how this might play out and what we might want to do, what's our next move. I think all of that's in play. I just don't know how viable some of it is. And a lot of it's just fun to discuss and people throw out. But in most cases, there's very little validity to it. Pac-12, real quick. As you're looking at the league, and one of the things that I think we're going to find out as they kind of figure out where they're going to go, and again, let's take them for example. They've got to look and see, Pac-12's got to make a move. Does TCU, Baylor, or anyone else, is that going to make you more money on the TV deal? If the answer is yes, then it's viable. If the presidents are comfortable with it. If you're not, it doesn't make any sense. More mouths to feed and you're not bringing in more money doesn't make sense. You know, as a conference, the thing that I keep mentioning is what's hurt them status-wise, certainly the TV deal, but going into the football element, USC. USC's not what they could or should be. When you look at them, we're going to break down, and I'll probably do it starting next week on the conference, where I'll go through each of the teams, kind of break down a little bit. But right now, Oregon certainly looks like the bell cow football program on how they're recruiting. USC's recruiting really well. But stability-wise, Oregon with Mario Cristobal is key. Washington's the second best program in the North, and in the South, you know, you can make the case that Arizona State's probably gained a lot of ground, even with their off-field snafus. It could be a little bit of an issue. So we'll get into a little bit more Pac-12, and again, as we begin to do some conference shows, that's going to be the better forum for that. I want to get into a couple of questions that you have. I want to first get into some NFL conversations. The AFC and NFC East on LandryFootball.com, we have begun to put our team-by-team NFL previews. Got the AFC East up now. Got the NFC East coming out tomorrow, and we're going to have a different division every day, and we're going to knock them out. We've got an overview of all the teams. We've got a depth chart. We've got a detailed draft analysis of every player in the draft, and then a position by position, a unit analysis. So you want to know, and I see Nola Jack in the chat room. Nola's asked in the past, and by the way, Nola, I don't know if I'll answer your question. You asked a while back for me to rate the receivers in the NFC South. I answered that question on another podcast. I don't know if you heard it. Do me a favor, hit me here in the chat room again and remind me, and I'll give you that answer. But I don't want to lose track, as I tend to do. I take each team and we'll grade, the quarterback, starting quarterback, the running back unit, the receiver, tight end unit, the offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. I grade them. And so I'll tell you, how Buffalo's running back room grades among the 32, and you'll see the number on it. So I think it's a real unique look at each of the teams in the NFL, and so I want you to take advantage of that. Again, as we kind of go forward with the folks at Podcast Park and on Twitch TV, the two podcast partners that I have, we're going to try to streamline, and so again, you want to be familiar. Normally at this time, we'll be doing Scout's Eye on pro football, and we'll be doing the Scout's Eye on college football 3 to 4. So we're going to try to kind of get everybody kind of in line, and we'll try to keep a little bit more on topic, because I think there's just too much information on the pro side and the college side to mix them. So we're going to do that. But quickly in the AFC, I think the storyline, and we'll get into the details, how I've got them graded. I think that the key team is New England. How do they respond? How do they respond? Can they catch Buffalo, who's clearly the favorite? The Jets are fourth in that in terms of a roster. Long way to go. And then Miami. Can Miami, can they finish second? Can they challenge? Or are they more of a clear third? We got their breakdowns for you. So we'll do that. In the NFC, I think it's real interesting. I think it'll be better than it was last year, and it was an awful division last year. Washington's got the best defensive front. Dallas has got a really good roster, but not deep. And got a better quarterback situation, probably more stable. But I think Washington's an interesting team to watch. I think the Giants are going to be the most improved and maybe the most overall balanced of the two. But, that's a team I could see contending or finishing third, and there's not a whole lot there. The Eagles look to me to be destined for fourth. They just don't. They seem to be, to me, it's a 3-team race. But we get into a lot of the details. And as we go going forward, and I'll start doing this next week on the Scouts Eye on Pro, we'll take each division, and like I've done a little bit with the college stuff for those of you that have followed the SEC show, I'll go into detailed breakdown of each team as we go. I want to get to a couple of questions here in the mailbag segment. Tony joins us, and Disco Spider J. Hey, sounds like a new one there joining us on Twitter. Thank you for joining us. I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well. Disco Spider J asks, what are your thoughts about NFL players and coaches not wanting to take the vaccine? Here's my thoughts on it. I don't have enough knowledge about, I'm not a political person, and I'm not a medical person. So I'm not really comfortable with saying you should take it, you shouldn't take it. I think that's between you and your doctor. Okay, but let me just say this. From someone that grew up as a coach and as a scout, and how I look at, the rules in the NFL, like them or not, you abide by it. And I learned a long time ago, Disco, that you're not there to set the rules, you're there to follow them. If your doctors say that it is safe, and I know that there's a lot we don't know. We don't know what getting COVID will do for us medically down the road. We don't know what the vaccine will do, because it's all been rushed, right? We normally, what I understand in the medical profession, it takes years of study to determine the risks, the reward, the factors of it, pro or con. Here's what I would say from a purely strategic standpoint. Really important to understand. Purely strategic standpoint. You got to make sure that you understand that if you take the vaccine, you're not subject to testing. So, and I think we may have just, for some reason, have technical difficulties gone off. So those of you are back. So if you take the vaccine, you basically, you prevent yourself from being tested as much. So even if you have it, because we know apparently that if you take the vaccine or don't, it doesn't prevent you from getting it. It may prevent you from it getting worse. But here's what we know in the practicality of testing. If you don't take the vaccine, you get tested, you test positive, you're affected, and anybody you've come in contact with has been affected. And it could cost your team, if you can't play the game, you're going to forfeit the game. That's real big. And you lose your pay for that game. Paycheck, big. You know, if you cause a forfeiture of a game, all of your teammates, including all the ones that took the vaccine, they lose their paycheck. That's heavy. That's a strong-armed way of saying getting the damn vaccine. So, look, selfishly, as a football guy, as a football coach, take the damn vaccine. Let's go. 100%. We don't have to worry about testing. We don't have to worry about forfeiture. We don't have to worry about any of that. That's probably a narrow-minded, selfish take. I'm just being honest. I'm just, but I want the games to be played. I don't want games to be forfeited. So that's the way I look at it and I view it. That's my view. I respect people that say I don't force it. I personally don't want to force the vaccine on anybody. I really don't. I mean, I don't know that maybe the answer is, and I think people have pointed this out to me, and rightly so, that look, we probably shouldn't have this stringent testing either way. So I'm on the side of get on the field, play. We're going to monitor, we're going to protect your health as best we can, but I don't want anything to disrupt it. That's selfish, short-sighted. That's my view on it. Nola Jack says, if you're rebuilding an NFL team, are you still open to trading veterans this close to the season? Well, yeah, but remember the trading deadline is more in line with where you're going to make that decision. So here's the thing about that, Nola Jack. If you start the rebuilding process and you dump a veteran, what are you doing? Think about this for a second. What are you trading for? Draft picks. Well, why would you trade a veteran player? First of all, it does two things. You send a message to your fan base, well, we don't think we're going to be a contender. Well, ownership doesn't like that because it affects your season ticket sales. Because they're not even. They're just rebuilding. Well, we know that Detroit's rebuilding. We know that a number of Jacksonville's rebuilding. But they're going to say, hey, look, we're going to be good. We're going to be competitive, yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's all important, right? So you tend to not want to do that. You tend to want to sell that we feel we can contend this year or compete this year. Not contend, compete. You want to sell that. But here's the other thing, Nola Jack. If you've got a player, let's say you're a team, and to your point, okay, so you've passed the draft, you didn't want to trade a guy then, or you couldn't, or whatever the circumstances are. Well, why trade them now? Because if you're going to trade a draft pick to, I don't know, let's just say I'm going to trade a draft pick to the Baltimore Ravens or the Tennessee Titans. Any team. I don't have a real good idea where they're going to be picking. Well, I can say those two teams are pretty good. So you're probably looking at late first round. But if you trade closer to the deadline, you're going to have a better idea of where those picks may be. Well, I want to know if I've got a chance to trade a player. Remember, trade a player. Good player, but we're not going to be able to keep him. I think we can get a third-round pick for this guy. Well, remember, a third-round pick is not a third-round pick. There's the first pick in the third round, there's the 32nd pick in the third round, and there's all the picks in between. So I'd like to know, again, you might get more teams, you're more likely to get more teams interested closer to the trading deadline. Because somebody, might have an injury and they feel like, we want to trade for that fill-in-the-blank player at that fill-in-the-blank position. So you may get more for him. You're going to get more for a player later than you are now, because a team that is interested in trading for that player is A, in contention and need another body, or B, had an injury and they need another body. So it doesn't make sense to make the move now, but later. The other thing for you is you have a better idea of where that pick's going to be. So if I'm going to have two teams that maybe are competing for a player, well, if they're both offering third-round picks, I can have a feel for who I think is going to have the higher pick in the third round. And if it's a really good team and a really weak team, I'm probably going to ask a round higher for the team that's really good. Or else I'm going to go with the team that's not as good. I think those things are important to understand. So if you're a rebuilding team, are you still open to trading veterans? Yes, but it really more is in line with closer towards the trade deadline, because I'm usually going to get more. Now, in a panic move, somebody wants a player really bad now. They have a disastrous injury in training camp. Might you trade them now? Yes, if you just get, knocked over with a great trade offer that you don't think you're going to get a better offer down the road, then I think you do it. Other than that, I think you have to be careful with it. Tony Finn, who would be your most improved playoff team for the AFC based in the offseason? Most improved team that made the playoffs. I would say that New England is likely going to be improved, because I think now they were not a playoff team, but I think they're going to be the most improved team, because I think that they will stabilize their quarterback position a little bit. And remember, they had a ton of opt-outs due to COVID. So I think that with a year to be able to adjust, I think they would come out. I think that, I don't know, the Browns might be, and I'm not going to, you're going to see how I got your Brownies rated out on LandryFootball.com. But, I may consider them as the team to beat in the AFC North. Who knows? But I don't know how much improved they are. They were just good last year. I think the Colts could be better. I think they could rebound. I think the Titans have got, but I don't know the Titans are going to be overly improved because they were good. I think the Chargers are a talented team that were under coach. So I would say that the Chargers, the Patriots would maybe fit that category of teams in the AFC that I think are going to be better, that maybe could be playoff caliber based on that. I think the teams that are good, still think the Bills are really good. I think the Chiefs are the team to beat. I'm not so sure that the Chiefs, healthy, wouldn't have won the Super Bowl, but be that as it may, I think the Chiefs are really good. And I think the Colts, could be improved this next season. Hey, a reminder of a couple of things. If you're listening to this in a podcast form, we encourage you to join us on twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. And that way you can join us in the chat room, ask your questions like Tony and Nola Jack and Disco Spider and others do. We really like having you here. And this way you'll get notified whenever we go on and do a show. Now, with that, I want to remind you that if you're listening, you're watching this, you want to go back and listen to something, and even if you're watching us on Twitch TV now, we ask you, just as a favor for us, if you don't mind, it doesn't cost you anything, search for, like, and subscribe to the Landry Football Podcast channel. Would you, wherever you get your podcasts, just sign up for that. You'll get notified whenever we get, and if you've already heard the show and you want to listen, you don't have to listen if you've already heard it. But it's a way to keep in touch with what we're doing and when we're doing it. Because, and I'm going to give you some lineup changes. Don't worry about writing it down or anything. Go to LandryFootball.com, and under Follow Chris on Twitch at the top, you're going to see underneath it Chris Landry Football Twitch TV program schedule, and you can see when these changes or what days are going to be. So here's how we're going to do it going forward. Live on Tuesdays from now on, 3 to 4 p.m. Central, we're going to do Scout's Eye on college football. Then 4 to 5, I'm going to do Big Ten football and beyond. And then in this time slot, 5 to 6, it's going to be Scout's Eye on pro football. And we're going to focus on NFL here. And it gives you, okay, you like some of the guys, I know Tony and Nola Jack, they're more like the NFL. And I know we get that a lot. SEC show, you're not, we're not beholden to strictly that topic. But that's why the name SEC Football and Beyond. We talk SEC, but we go beyond that, National College Football, NFL. And it's not that we're going to ignore your questions, but we tend to want to focus on that. And this has a lot to do with our podcast partners, the Podcast Park folks. So it'll give you a better way to go about following what you want. You're an SEC fan, you can follow that show. A fan of another conference, we're going to have that. So real quick, in the 5 p.m. Central Time slot, we're going to do Scout's Eye on pro football on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, we're going to do the Landry Football Podcast. We mix both on that, and we'll try to do either some stories or some overall, like tomorrow on Landry Football Podcast, we're going to talk about how to evaluate receivers and who are some of the best receivers in the college and the pro game this year. And I think those things are a little bit unique, long form, and informative. And, of course, we'll take your questions. So what we're going to do in the 4 p.m. Central Time slot, on Mondays, we're going to have ACC football and beyond. Tuesdays, Big Ten football and beyond. Wednesdays, Big 12 football and beyond. And Thursdays, Pac-12 football and beyond. SEC football and beyond is on Mondays and Thursdays live, 5 p.m. And again, know that's clear as mud. It's hard to remember all that. Not here to confuse you, frustrate you. Go to LandryFootball.com, hit Chris Landry Football Twitch TV program schedule right underneath, and it'll tell you when we're on. So that way, if you're an NFL fan and you maybe get frustrated on some of the other shows that I'm doing at not enough NFL, whatever, you can get your fix there. If you want, hey, look, I like your college football show. I'm going to go what's topical. I like your SEC show, but I'm a Big Ten fan. Fine, we're going to have a Big Ten show for you, and I'm going to give you the updates. It's just for two reasons. The college game, I cover the entire country. I study the entire country. So I can't do a good enough job in the hour that I have, or less than that really, to get all of the country with everything. So in the Scouts Eye on college football, we're going to hit on the big things, the big topical things, and then we're going to go heavy into the SEC on the SEC show. Big Ten, I'll be doing I do the SEC show with Neil now. And hopefully he'll stay with us, but we don't know on any of it. The ACC show I'll do myself. The SEC, the Big 10, Big 12, do all myself, and we can focus recruiting, evaluation, particularly we get into the season. We'll get into a lot of what goes on and why through those conference shows, and then we'll have the Landry Football Podcast to cover everything. We have the college show, Scout's Eye College show to do the college and the NFL. So we'll see how that works. I mean, eventually I'd like to cut the amount of shows, but I'm trying to find what's the right niche for you guys, so we think it's really good. Tony asks, wondering how NFL coaches deal with expectations from outside when a team did well the season before with no expectations. Look, the minute you have expectation, there's an expectation in the NFL that's higher than anywhere. In that, if you don't win, you don't have a long lifespan in the league. So what you deal with it is, I think you're up front. I think you deal with outside distractions. Expectations are relative. That's perception. You determine how good you are, and there are two ways to get better, right? You get your players better, or you get better players. Well, the time to get better players is done. That's the off season, the scouting season, as we like to call it. Now it's the in season and the development and getting players better. I think you deal with it with a certain level of expectation with your players. Tony, the way you do it is when you deal with them, you hold them to a high standard. There is nowhere you're a rookie. You're going to make. Everybody's going to make mistakes. Continue to make the same mistakes over and over. Learn from your mistakes. We're going to pick you up, and we expect you to pick us up. We invested a high pick. We invested a draft pick. We signed you as an undrafted free agent. We signed you as a free agent in the NFL for a reason. We think you can help us. And I think you have to have that motivation. If you go in with the idea, if you're Jacksonville, like, look, we're not any good, we're just trying to lay the foundation, you're not going to win. You have to start to create a culture of winning, how to do it, a standard of what we do. And if you're successful, if you're, to your point, if it's the Buffalo Bills, I don't know, if people didn't have great expectations, they had now better expectations. Their fans think you got to get to the next step, get to the Super Bowl. The way you deal with it is you don't pick up where you left off last year. You start over every year. But you've got a team, you've got your core together, and you got to learn from that. You got to get better. And so much of it is a race to Thanksgiving, and then it's how successful you are, how healthy you are from Thanksgiving on. So I think that's really important to understand. We've covered a bunch today. I appreciate you joining us. And again, we'll be back for the Landry Football Podcast on Wednesday. You could, again, catch it live on twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. That's where you want to go to see the live TV streaming of this. And then we're going to go, we're working with our folks at Podcast Park. I don't know if every one of these shows are going to be on the channels. I've talked with management. I think they do, but there's a limit on how many shows on one channel. We're going to figure all that out for you. But the one thing we'll tell you is we'll give you shows here live that you can watch on ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, NFL, college football, and then both. We've got it all for you here on. Remember that you need to sign up for the Landry Football Podcast channel. So we've got all that for you here, part of this network of football shows that we have. So sign up for Landry Football Podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And we certainly look forward to being a part of your football year. We're trying to streamline things and get it together for you as the football season, for all intents and purposes, are on. All the training camps, everybody's reported for training camp now. I mean, all the teams have. Not some of the players that haven't signed deals, but all the teams are in training camp now. And we're about a week and a half away, or in some cases a week away from college pre-season practices starting. So we're going to hit heavy and hard as the football season all year round is big. We've got a lot of news notes, and certainly when you have stuff like expansion, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. But football season, you pretty much know the topic. We're going to break it down for you. And one of the reasons why I want to provide enough for everyone that make sure that their conference, their teams are covered, we're going to do that for you here on the Chris Landry Football Network on Twitch TV, and certainly on the Landry Football Podcast channel. Sign up for it there. So for today, we're got to jump on something else here in a little bit. So we're going to step aside for today, and we'll see you tomorrow on Landry Football Podcast. We'll give you the update, the latest. We'll always have interesting news and notes around the world of football, college, and pro on the Landry Football Podcast. And we're going to break down receivers. How I evaluate receivers, how they should be evaluated, and what you look for, how it's changed over the years. So bring your questions here in the chat room. Thank you so much, Tony, Nola Jack, Disco Spider, all of you. Oh, by the way, Nola Jack, sorry, you didn't remind me. Shame on you. You asked me to evaluate and you'll see it over at LandryFootball.com. But in looking at it, how I rank the receivers in the NFC South, I would go definitely Tampa. Tampa may have the best receiving core in the league. Then I would go Atlanta still, and I'd probably put Carolina slightly over the Saints. I certainly would do it with Michael Thomas out, but I'm still factoring that in. We'll see how that plays out during the year, if that changes or not. That's how I would see it. And again, I hope you heard me answer that question a while back. You asked that a couple of times, and things going, again, we'll try to organize it a little bit better. So bring it in the chat room, questions or comments. Really appreciate you joining us. This is what we're doing it for here. So talk to you tomorrow, everybody. Same time, same channel. Have a great evening, everyone.